Welcome everyone to the Co-Creators Convergence Thursday night Creator Convos. I'm Noelle Marshall and I'm here with my beloved.
Hi everyone, wonderful to have you with us this evening and to have our dear friend Mare Cromwell with us. Very, very significant evening and what she's bringing forward to us in the weeks ahead. Thank you for being with us, Mare.
Honored, truly honored.
It's really great to have Mare back, because she's been with us many times with the Thousand Goddess Gathering over the years, and now she's doing another global grid, which she's going to go into detail. It's coming up in 10 days. So today we get to pick her brain, find out what the plan is, and learn how to join in. So before I give a formal introduction to Mare, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Co-Creators Convergence. So please stand by. So welcome once again to the Co-Creators Convergence Thursday night Co-Creators Convo. And I want to introduce you to my dear friend, Mare Cromwell. And I met Mare in Frederick, Maryland, where we both kind of, she lives and I learned to fly there. Spent a lot of time in Frederick. But so I read her books. I love her work and she keeps expanding. And we're going to learn about the next big project that she has coming up. But let me tell you about Mare. She is a humble servant to the Great Mother. As an internationally known Gaia mystic and high priestess, she's a visionary, a healer, an award-winning author, and she is here to help love the new earth in. Mare has studied with Native American elders for 26 years, and she downloaded the books Messages for Mother, Earth Mother, and the Great Mother Bible. That was one of my favorites. Her first book is If God Gave You, let me get this straight. If I gave you God's phone number, searching for spirituality in America. So it's very diverse. Mare leads the Thousand Goddess Gathering, Global Grid, and teaches the Great Mother Love Way course, among other programs. She is also founder and director of the Great Mother Love Way nonprofit. And you can find Mare at www.greatmotherlove.earth. And her email is also in the chat. So that's the formal introduction of Mare. And one of the first things we co-created with Mare was the Thousand Goddess Gathering. What was that first year? What year was that, Mare?
That was 2016, and you were amazing. You and Bob, you guys rallied a lot of your community from the Co-Creators Convergence group and staffed a lot of booths there that weekend. Yeah, and the wind blew. Oh my gosh, the winds of change were blowing that day. It was a powerful ceremony.
They certainly were. Now I remember because it was before the presidential election. And that was in October. And so the next month things changed, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
I think it could have been a lot worse if we hadn't done our prayer activations there. But it was an amazing event, and you've been doing that ever since. And I'm just so grateful that we were able to be invited to be a part of that. And we love to see how you're continuing to grow. I know that you also wanted to do a land acknowledgement. So I'm just going to say, before I turn it over to you, is that we are on Cherokee land here and are grateful for the wonderful waters and mountains here and in Bristol, Tennessee, where we're located. So Mare, I know you're going to lead us in ceremony, and I'm going to turn it over to you now, but they are going to have conversation. I just want to tell everyone that the chat is open. Please put your comments and questions in there. We will have a Q&A at whenever Mare directs us. And I'm just your servant for the next 60 to 90 minutes. Well, I always am, but we'll go with that for now. So, okay,
We're
Mare.
all serving. We're all serving
That's
the
right.
new earth. Let's hope. Yeah. All right. To start with, I want to acknowledge that I am humble and very grateful to be located where I am in Maryland, in the southern part of south of Frederick, in the ancestral indigenous lands of the Kanoi, Tuscarora, Shawnee, and Piscataway peoples here in this region. So I want to first honor them and their ancestors. And I really need to say this before I go any further, because I'm about to open up a ceremony. Everything I do is ceremony. So I'm going to be doing some invocations here. But I have been hearing for the past hour before starting this is the ancestors are watching. The ancestors are watching. And this particular event, they're really watching. So on that note, I'm going to call on the spirit teams that support my work. And as Noelle mentioned, I have surrendered to serve the Great Mother. It's a long story. I'll get into that a little bit, perhaps, after we do the invocations. Oh. I am that I am, humbly calling on the Creator, great mystery source. Please bless us with all that we need for this program tonight and beyond this program tonight. I am that I am, calling on the Creatrix, the ultimate divine feminine of our universe. Please hold us in sacred space and bless us with all that we need for this program and beyond this program. I am that I am, calling on Mother Gaia. Oh, Mama, we are your sacred children here in Sacred Circle. We're gathered here to learn about an effort, Mother, that is to support your healing and the healing of the original peoples and all their trauma and their ancestral trauma. Please hold us in sacred space, Mother. Please bless us with all that we need. Oh. I am that I am, calling on all the other spirit teams and all the guardians who support the Great Mother Love Way, who support the Great Mother Love Way work that I have surrendered to do for Mother and the birthing of our new earth, to help us bring forth an incredible future that is already coming in, believe it or not, in the midst of the chaos. A beautiful future of joy and abundance, living in balance and harmony with all the sacred seen and unseen ones here on our sacred earth. As we rise up into our fullest spiritual potential and potential to live in a beautiful dance of co-creative energies with all that is here on earth, that exists with us. Welcome, teams. Welcome, teams. And in particular, I want to invite all the ancestors, the Indigenous ancestors who are aware of this global grid happening on Sunday, March 19th, the ones who have been gathering in my space over the past few weeks and months even, inviting you to hold us in sacred space and to see our hearts, our pure hearts. We have gathered here to support you and the healing in the ancestral realms, both tonight and over the weekend of the global grid on March 19th. Welcome, ancestors. Oh, interesting. I am hearing a very specific spiritual request that everybody who is here, everyone's muted, is to call on your ancestors serving the highest good and to invite your ancestors to be part of this gathering tonight, because this is not just humans coming together on Zoom. This is actually a gathering of ancestors with us. So I'll give you guys a few moments to do that.
Thank you, Mare. That's a beautiful way to start. And I appreciate you inviting my ancestors in. I think they're all related, but to all of our ancestors, but it is wonderful. And I've been doing a lot of ancestry work lately, just kind of figuring out that I'm a Mayflower descendant with William Brewster the fourth.
Wow.
But yeah, so I've been doing a little. So I love the connection with the ancestors. But I want to talk today about, this is the first time you've had this apology ceremony, to my knowledge, and to the original peoples and their ancestors. And how are you building the global grid? And give us more background about how this came about. What are the ancestors requesting? How do they see it rolling out? And, give us some more about what the message has been to you.
Yeah, and you know what, actually, Noelle, before I want to get into that, I realized that it's important for people who are just getting to know me here tonight to understand that I'm considered a mystic, a Gaia mystic, and I know you shared that, Noelle. But what happened is, in a ceremony with a gifted Algonquin man in early June of 2012, Gaia, who this Algonquin man has been communicating with, and even she appeared to him, requested that the two of us do this ceremony. And it was just the two of us. And she said to him prior to us doing it that this was going to be healing for her. And we didn't know what that meant. But right before the ceremony, he said to me, he says, I'm going to be bringing Gaia's energy and conscious into your energy body, but I don't know how you're going to disconnect afterwards. And my response in that moment was, I'm not concerned, because I know my life is to serve Mother. I just call her Mother, pretty much. And so right after that ceremony, Mother has been speaking to me very clearly. And from that, 2 books were written with her, and various interesting adventures, such as 1,000 Goddesses Gathering, Global Grid. She asked me to organize. So this particular global grid is different. Mother is supporting it hugely, but this, first of all, what it is ceremonies being held all over the world. And so it's not just a simple apology, it's actually with the intention that we light a candle, we research who are the original peoples where we live. And this includes people in Europe calling on their original peoples from their region, because their ancestors are still there on the spirit plane. And then write a letter of apology representing you or me. If for my letter, I'll be representing me. And also representing the ancestors from my lineage, I'll speak for myself, that have been the perpetrators, or related ancestors who have been the perpetrators of the conquest, of the decimation of the indigenous peoples, there's just such a horrendous history that's been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years, related to what's happened to these incredibly wise spiritual people who we share the planet with, that have not been respected largely by the Christian faith. And so we already have, and actually I have a PowerPoint I'm going to bring up. This is a good time
Sure.
to do it. Yeah,
Sure.
let me just bring that up. So this is the banner. This is actually an image from Wikipedia. I scoured Wikipedia for good images for the website, but this is a Lakota or a Sioux and teepee encampment in the late 1800s. It's a US military photo. So that says something unto itself right there, that's the source of that photo. And what I wanted to share with you is that as of this afternoon, we have 127 ceremonies who have registered officially. And I know there are a lot more people intending to participate, but a lot of people don't want to register. So you can see that the grid is expanding. I would love to have people in more parts of South America, and obviously Russia and China and more parts of Africa, but it's really exciting to see the numbers of people who are stepping forward and saying, I want to participate. And actually, you know, Noelle, we didn't talk about this, but can you put the website apologies to originalpeoples.earth in the chat box?
Yeah, sure. Mhm.
That'd be great. It's kind of a long URL, but it's apologies to originalpeoples.earth.
Mhm.
I'm going to stop share there. So this particular event is a really daunting one, and it sources from, I was doing events in Australia and New Zealand back in the spring of 2019. And the final event that I was scheduled to do in Australia was outside a town called Bellingen. And that's north of Sydney, near Coffs Harbour. I believe that's what the town is that I flew into. And my friend who I was going to do the workshop with, who's organized hundreds and hundreds of workshops, was having all sorts of really huge challenges getting this one organized. Had to change venue. There was all this flack. We were going to do a workshop on connecting more sacredly with Mother Gaia. And for those of you who know Australia and maybe have been there, the Aboriginal people are very, very present still, as opposed to where I live in Maryland, where there are some Aboriginal people who have a very small reservation, the Piscataway people on the other side of DC from where I live. But in Australia, they were settled far more recently. And so there are still villages and a few reservations. I don't know the full history, but what I can tell you is that when I arrived in the Bellingen area with my friend, she took me for a drive around the next day to basically look at the town, see where we're going to do the workshop. And as soon as we got out of the car, a little park just outside the town, I could tell the energies were really funky. I'm pretty sensitive to energy with my work with all the Native American teachers I've worked with. I kind of have this radar for funky energy. And I was floored with how strange the energy was. And I asked my friend, what's going on here? And that's when she told me that back in, it was either 1910 or 1920, that the white settlers who were coming into that part of Australia really coveted the land next to the river that the Aboriginal village lived on. And this is obviously an Aboriginal village that had been there for a very, very long time. And so in their desire to have their town there, they decided to give the entire village all these bags of arsenic-laced flour. And almost everybody died rather quickly. I don't really know exactly how arsenic works with flour, but and the only people who survived were the little children. And from what the stories are, the children wandered for a couple of days till they found another village. And they talked about how everybody in their town, in their village, just fell asleep. They didn't understand. And so fast forward to 2019, I show up and hear this story, and it's obviously very, very tragic, and the energies are really strange there. And the following morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, Mother Gaia woke me up along with the ancestors, because I know it wasn't just Mother, and informed me point blank, because this is how it works with Mother. She says, this is what you're doing. she said, the workshop is not going to happen. This needs to be a ceremony and an invitation to the local white people who created the town Bellingen, which, by the way, they didn't locate it right on the river. They decided to move it a couple kilometers down the road. It's supposed to be an invitation to them to create a strategy to offer amends, some kind of reparations and amends to that village that had been massacred. So that's what we did. And there was an Aboriginal elder who was part of it. He welcomed this. And I found out after I left, came back to the United States, that a council was formed, or a committee, and they were pursuing something that they could do that would make things more right. They obviously can't bring these people's lives back, but at least to offer some apology, something. And so that happened in April, late April of 2019. I came back to Maryland. In that August, I was down near the Potomac River in a small town called Point of Rocks. And I knew there were some ancestors there. I had connected with them with another Indigenous elder that I study with. And I happened to be in the post office. And I mentioned, because I can kind of be a big mouth when it comes to the spiritual stuff, because I want people to wake up. And I said to the postmaster, I said, well, you know, there are ancestors, Native American ancestors, who are still here on the spirit planes. And before I knew it, there was one right there in the post office. I could feel him. I don't see, but I feel and I hear. And I was like, wow, okay. So an ancestor just showed up. And the ancestor got in my car with me in the back seat and guided me to go to the ice cream place, which is just down the road on the edge of Point of Rocks. Believe it or not, I got an ice cream cone. The ancestors were hanging out. And I sat way in the back, facing this huge field, and I like licking my ice cream cone, believe it or not. And I said, how can I help you? You know, you've come forward. There's something you want me to do. And the request was, we organize an apology ceremony here. And so we did it 3 weeks later. We had a group of about 25 people. And some of the people who were there could see spirit really clearly. It was fascinating to hear what they saw. Again, I could feel the ancestors coming in, and then there were white ancestors that came in that were still there on the spirit plane. And but the people who could see spirit reported to me later that they saw like a group of women, Indigenous women, coming up from the river. And I don't know how many of you are sensitive to energy, but as I'm sharing this with you, I can feel these ancestors coming in spiritually. So that was the second time. And then in, let's say it was early September of 2021, which is like 2 years later after COVID and all that, or after the big wave of COVID, I was visiting a friend who lives outside of DC in the northern part of the Maryland suburbs in an area called, actually, I can't remember the name of the neighborhood, but anyway, her property, she and her husband's property backs up to Seneca State Park. And I think everybody here is probably aware that the Seneca are a group of Native Americans that still exist, but this park is named after them. And so when I went to visit her and, you know, scope out the property and walk a little bit in the woods there, that was the park, I could feel the ancestors there. And I said to her, you know, it'd be really great if you offered them tobacco. And I even left her some tobacco because I do that a lot. And I had dinner with them. And then when I got in my car afterwards, there was an ancestor in the back of the car. I could feel him. And he was very quiet. So I drove very slowly through the neighborhood. And when I got to the main road, I didn't yet turn on it. I paused, I stopped the car, and I could feel him leaving the car. And I was like, okay, well, thank you for your presence. I'm honored. And then when I got on the main road, I was shown these glimpses of how the forest there looked, how that land looked when it was still Native American territory. It was really profound. I mean, I was able to drive safely, but there was like these visions that started coming through. And when I got home, I heard the message, please organize another apology ceremony. We would really like that. And of course, here's the thing is that when ancestors ask you to do something, if you have the capacity to hear them, you can't say no. You can't. So I did that ceremony. And then 2 days later, I was driving to Baltimore. I live about an hour from Baltimore. And in the back seat again, they like the back seat, was another ancestor. And this one said, will you please organize a global grid of ceremonies, apology ceremonies, to the original peoples and, the ancestors. And I have to be honest, I gulped. I'm like, but I couldn't say no. And so I sat with this request for a year because I didn't really know how I was going to do it. And I'm an ultra empath, and I was a bit concerned about feeling and taking in all of the emotional energy of all this trauma that is still here. It's, clearly Native Americans and original peoples all around the planet are still not treated well. I just found out last week about very sad, an Amazonian activist in Ecuador was killed a week and a half ago in front of his house next to his wife for trying to block more oil exploration. And so this is a very sensitive topic. And yet by the end of 2022, I knew, okay, I can do this. I have the wherewithal. I can do this. I'm feeling more capable of doing this. So there's a question from Rob.
He's making a couple recommendations on YouTube videos to watch: Journey to Forgiveness and the Wellbrighting Movement and Intergenerational Trauma. So he's making a few recommendations. And
thank you. And I see that
we can hold the Q&A till you're ready to bring things in.
Yeah, okay, because otherwise we're going to get way off track.
Yeah, but I will just bring this other one in. Rochelle Gaiman says she thinks an apology ceremony is wonderful and beautiful. I feel there'll be a major cleansing and healing for all. And Rochelle is a very gifted, psychic medium. So
thank you, Rochelle.
Please register. Ancestors here. Yeah.
Everybody who really feels the call, and I hope all of you feel the call to be part of it, please register. We really, really want to put you on the map to just show how many of us around the world want to be involved, have good hearts, and want to bring forward the healing. So thank you. Noelle, do you have another question for me?
Yeah. So this is the catalyst for this unified field. That is the ancestors themselves. That was that experience that you had, or is there more to it than what you've been able to share with us so far?
It's really their invitations. That's been the catalyst. And again, this comes down to, and I know I've said it a couple of times, is that you can't say no to the ancestors. And I realized when I started working on this and I started reaching out to a couple of Indigenous elders, some rather prominent ones in early January, I got a very clear message that this is soul contract work. I agreed to do this before I was born. So there's that piece too, because when that comes forward, you can't say, well, you can try to say no, or you can try to run away, but this is part of what I'm here to do during this earth walk. But yeah, their invitation, their request, I have to do it.
Well, it's also interesting that I know that some people would say, well, you're not Indigenous, and why is this, white person doing this? And do you feel any disconnect from or pushback from any ancestors or those on the planet now that are going like, yeah, what's she doing this for? That's our business. Does that make any sense?
It does. And I did get some, criticism of who am I to be a white person organizing this, and why aren't I doing this with an Indigenous group as a partnering group? And I want to speak to the first part about being a white person. The first response to that honestly is, why not a white person? And then going deeper in that, this needs to come from a descendant of the peoples who came over from Europe, mostly Europe, who were the colonists. And my ancestors here in Maryland have actually been here since the mid 1600s. And as an aside, I'm related. I'm a descendant from Oliver Cromwell's brother. So when Oliver Cromwell lost power in England, his family had to flee. Some went to Belgium, some came to the New World, some changed their names. This is what I understand. So I know that my ancestors had slaves here in Maryland. I am I don't have any facts specifically about it, but they were part of the early group that came in to claim land. And so I feel an obligation representing my ancestry in that level. But I also want to speak to something that was shared with me by a man. I don't have permission to use their names because I just don't. But I spoke back in the middle of January with a man who has studied with Aboriginal elders and other North American Native elders in the New England area and Canadian area. And this man is extraordinarily gifted. He can see spirit, he can hear spirit, and he's really walking the red road with his work. And if you don't know what that means, he's basically following the indigenous ways of great wisdom, and he does trainings in this. So he has met over the years, and he must be in his late 50s, early 60s now. He has been working with these indigenous peoples for many, many, many years. So he was speaking with a prominent Native American elder who I can't say his name, but very prominent man. And this Native American elder said, the Jews didn't do this to us. The Muslims didn't do this to us. The Christians are the ones who did this to us. They are the ones who owe us an apology. And I was raised Catholic. And in putting this event together and researching it, I was doing some research about the Vatican, and I see if I can dig this up. And the Vatican and the popes in the 1400s and even prior to that were endorsing Christians going around and taking over the planet, honestly, because everyone else was an infidel. And so if they were not Christian, the Catholic Church, the Vatican, claimed that their followers who were Christian had every right to go and claim the land and convert the infidels to Christianity, because it was, we needed to, the message was basically, we need to clean up all of the spirituality that's not Christian. And so it's a very sordid history. Here we go. Pope Innocent IV argued that Christians were justified in invading and acquiring infidels' lands because it was the church's duty to control the spiritual health of all humans on earth.
Now, I think that's the papal bull. Is that the doctrine of discovery?
I think
that's what gave them license to come over.
Yep,
and
Catholic Church doctrine of discovery. I tell you.
Yeah, that's we're know trying to get that. There's a big movement within the Catholic Church. I was raised Catholic, and this big movement within the Catholic Church to have the Pope Francis nullify that, and because that it's still being cited. Ruth Bader Ginsburg actually used that papal bull as part of her defense to in one of her judgments against Indigenous rights, land rights in New England, as late as 1985. So yeah, this is it was a Indigenous group that bought back their land and then didn't want to pay taxes on it. There was a group of Indigenous that bought back their land. And then I think it was in Charles, Massachusetts or something. And they didn't want to pay taxes on it because now they own the land now. And the town took them and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they ruled against them. And they cited some of the rationale for it was this papal bull that was from the 1400s as the rationale in the explanation of the case. So yeah.
There's a part of me that I'm like suppressing this rage that surfaces when I learn about these things and I read about what the Vatican has endorsed for centuries. And this even gets into a bigger question of who are we to even think we can own land? I mean, but this is what we're getting into here, which is part of this greater topic is, indigenous cosmologies, and I'm being general, putting it that way, it's like 180 degrees different than the Western views of the planet And the word resources doesn't fit within Indigenous languages because everything within their realms is sacred. And they are working together, co-creating in ceremony, celebrating sacred water, sacred trees, sacred plants. How can we own anything like that? Yeah.
Well, it's one of the many unexamined assumptions that we have as a culture, that, you know, we think we can own them. And my father always said, well, you better buy real estate because they're not making it anymore. So I've got to have my real estate, my land. And the whole thing is like, that's I never examined that assumption. What gives me the right to own land?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so
And
just
I heard a Maori woman speak recently who was talking about how within her language and their traditions in New Zealand, that they have different words for the way that the land owns them and the energies of the land help birth them. It's a whole different way of looking at the world around us. And I mean, one of the things that I really want to stress is, you know, I've been doing environmental work since the mid-'80s, and I taught sustainability workshops for a number of years and then got involved very closely with Mother Gaia, and I've been downloading messages from her to the world at large. And there are prophecies that speak to these really chaotic times that we're in right now. And one of them is there's a paragraph about this on the website from a very prominent Anungan or Aleutian elder named Larry McCurlia. And in the prophecies that speak to where we are right now, they talk about how there will come a time that the world will need the wisdom of the Indigenous peoples, and we will need to learn it and learn how to live it. And the way Larry wrote this paragraph, and again, it's on the website, and he said at the end of his little paragraph, and that time is now. So
absolutely.
You know, we have to really shift our ways and wake up in our worldviews in order for us to make it through this really bumpy phase that we're going through, so that we can move forward to this new earth coming in with far more ease and grace. And one of the biggest things is to realize the planet is not a big rock to just harvest resources from. It is not at all. It's incredibly conscious. We have a planetary caretaker, Mother Gaia, and everything is woven into the sacred web of energy. And the beautiful thing is the prophecies also speak to how the hoop will mend. So we're living in a time where there are a lot of us, such as myself, and maybe everybody who's part of this discussion here, maybe all of you were Indigenous peoples in past lives, because there are prophecies about the rainbow people, people who are born looking like me, who have been Indigenous in past lives, who yearn to bring this wisdom back because we remember it in our soul bodies. So I know that's a big part of my life because I have past life memories of being Indigenous. But these are the times to really offer apologies. That's part of the process.
I think what you're bringing forward is so valuable, so needed, so much from the heart. And, you know, if we could just move from the head to the heart and have that compassion for ourselves and for, you know, our history, what has happened, and offer, you know, as you said, an offering from the heart to make reparations. It doesn't have to be a tangible reparation necessarily, but it needs to be from a heart. And, you know, when you mentioned that about past lives, you know, I don't know how many on this planet believe in past lives, but I'm going to tell this one little story. Is that okay, Mare?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. There was a TV show on, I think it was Netflix. It was a series and had about 6 things. It was about one of the shows addressed past lives. And there was this little boy who told his parents that his little, you know, suburban kid, middle class, white child. And he had visions. He kept telling his parents that his name wasn't what they were calling him. And then he described, he says, yeah, I was shot and killed. And he described where he lived and that he was Black and he was playing in a park and he was shot with a gun. And so the parents didn't, they said, well, we're going to investigate this, because how could this child who's, just learning to speak basically convey all this information? So they did research and found out that he described this actual event did happen in the Bronx. And so he was a different color in that lifetime, but he could describe everything about his previous life. And so when you said, you were Indigenous, and, we've probably all been everything, haven't we? So, but I just love that story, because when I think about some of these, these people that are, white supremacists, I think, like, you ever thought about you've been being Black or Indigenous in a previous lifetime? And,
Yeah.
that's kind of crazy thought there.
Well, maybe not really. Along these lines, I feel compelled to share this, is one of my friends is the Lakota elder, and he shared with me that, I don't know where he got this information, but this man is a medicine man, so he's pretty tuned in on the spirit plane, that a lot of the Native Americans living on reservations during this time were actually the soldiers who were massacring the Native Americans in different parts of North America in their previous lifetime. So their karma has been to come back and to experience the suffering that Native peoples experience now. Now, I can't say if that's all of them. I think it's an interesting angle on it. It speaks of truth to me. When I tune in, it feels like truth. So there is that piece there, which doesn't necessarily make it right, the way Native Americans are treated today at all, or any Indigenous peoples around the world. But I think that past life and karmic retribution is a real thing. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I want to talk about? I want to
Sure.
talk about, first of all, I want to say thank you to you for talking about dropping to our hearts, because that's one of the things that Larry Mikurliev, the Aleutian elder, Nungan elder, spoke to me about, because I asked him, I said, Larry, I'm going to have on the website, what are next steps? Because obviously doing an apology ceremony is a beautiful and powerful thing, but that's only the beginning. And so he said, with the council of elders that he works with, and he works with very prominent ones from around the world, he said, we all need to drop from our heads to our heart. The people who are of the intellectual Western mindset need to wake up their hearts and start to live from their hearts. So I love that you mentioned that, because that's like step number one in suggested next steps. And there are other steps too, such as researching whose lands do you live on? Who are the original peoples of where you live, and talk about them, mention them. If you do any events, bring it forward like we did at the beginning of this. Another suggestion is research, if you can, the treaties of the peoples who were the original peoples where you live, or still are the original peoples, and find out what happened with them. I mean, odds are good. Almost all those treaties were not honored. But it's really rich to research them and then find out what didn't happen. And then another step is contact whoever are the Native peoples where you live and ask how you can help them. And ask from a place of humility, open-heartedness. We are really good within the Western mindset of going into different parts of the world and saying, we know what you need. Here, we're going to put up fences. We're going to do X, Y, Z. But they don't ask the local people what they need. So, so this is an invitation to any of us. And there's some other steps too, like become an activist, support them, their sovereignty, because they are struggling. I mean, I I'm on the Lakota Law. Oh, I think it's called the Lakota Law Group. I'm not saying it right, but I get their emails, every other day or every few days.
That's one
And
with
one of their-
Daniel Sheehan.
Yeah, with Daniel Sheehan and
He's amazing.
yes, he supports them greatly as a lawyer. But
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember the Lakota man who is the head of it. He's a lawyer also, brilliant man. But they just put out a newsletter about raising funds because they're supporting another group of tribes in the Nevada area that are facing the impending mining or the proposed mining for lithium in their sacred mountains. And here we have this classic conflict of, thank you, Iron Eyes, thank you. This classic conflict of lithium batteries are used for electric cars. So we have this need to minimize our burning of fossil fuels, but where are we getting the lithium? And if it means sacred mountains in Nevada, then we need to rethink how we're doing this. And I know there are lithium mines in Zambia. I had the good fortune to go to Zambia last summer, and there are big lithium mines there that are wreaking havoc on the environment. And again, we have to really rethink how we are proposing to live into the future with our transportation and and the way we get around if we're going to go desecrating and destroying more mountains that are sacred lands. And frankly, every all land is sacred. I will say that. And then I'll also say that some land has been used, or that's not the right word. Some land has experienced ceremony for a very long time, this highly, highly sacred land. And it wreaks havoc on those lands when they go in and they're mined or they're drilled or whatever it is. There's a ripple effect, honestly, across the planet, which actually brings me to something I really want to get into, is that in my work, I never knew I'd be getting into this. I never knew I'd be doing this kind of global grid. But since the first 1,000 Goddesses gathering that was on the Washington Mall, there were a few groups that wanted to join from other parts of the country. And then from there, it has evolved into a global grid of ceremonies where we have like 32 countries and 178 ceremonies registered. And this is about subtle activism. And subtle activism, if you haven't ever heard that term, is working within the energetic realms, working within the spiritual realms, where we are all connected. And there's research from the Maharishi University, where when a group of people meditate in a very concentrated way in a city where there's a lot of violence, in a neighborhood where there's a lot of violence, they have documented that for the next week or so, that there's far less violence taking place within that neighborhood. So when I get called by Mother Gaia, and in this case, the ancestors, to organize another global grid, it's really about weaving the energies of our hearts and these ceremonies so that it's a global grid of energies, weaving healing energies into the spiritual realms. And I've come to understand, and I don't have the whole picture, and I never probably will have the whole picture till I pass over, but the ancestral realms are very significant here on Earth. And yet our Western culture doesn't really give much attention to these realms, but other spiritualities do. And the native peoples very much honor their ancestors. And actually, I want to point out back here is my ancestor altar. And if you can see, there's a candle lit right there. I light it every morning. And these days, I'm keeping that candle lit throughout the day, because I keep on calling on the ancestors for support, because this has been a challenging project to hold space for. And it's the ancestors that were guiding me in how to do the website, the wording. I'm telling you, it's like they keep on telling me they have my back, and literally they're right behind me. They
Can I
have my
show
back.
your website for a moment? Can I
Yeah,
show your
yeah, go for
website?
it.
Okay,
for
let's
it.
see if we have that here. So that's that picture. That's a picture you showed us before. And
Yep.
why ceremony. So there's some information there. anything else here?
Yeah, actually, if you want to go back to the home page, I may
Sure.
go run over really quickly right now. This feels right to do.
Mhm.
If you scroll down,
Uh-huh.
there is an image of William Commanda, grandfather William Commanda. Can
This
you
one?
just pause for a second there?
Sure. Uh-huh.
I want to tell you that I have to pause for a second. First of all, I'm grateful to Wikipedia for the capacity to access photos that are Creative Commons. Thank you, Wikipedia. Having said that if you go on Wikipedia, and I think it's Native Americans, it's that page, they actually have a photograph of the military throwing all these frozen Lakota soldier bodies into a trench, a huge trench. And I saw that on Wikipedia and I went, oh my God. And that's only a glimpse of the horrors that Native peoples around the planet have experienced. I mean, I have all these books on my bookshelf right here written by various Native Americans and other people who've studied closely with them. And there's a story that, how can I not remember his name in the moment? Oh dear. A very famous Native man who passed, I think about 20 years ago. He actually worked with the Grateful Dead. I can't believe I'm not remembering his name right now, but he talks about how there was a Shoshone tribe and the armies were moving in and they wanted to take the Shoshone land, and they invited this village to a gathering and they said, we will not have our weapons. It's going to be a celebration. And so the village showed up, and of course the military had their guns, and they killed one of the men in the village in front of everybody else, all the Shoshone people. I'm sorry, I have to say this. It's just this history. They actually chopped the man's body up, put it in a huge pot of stew, and forced the villagers to eat from that pot of stew. And there's a lot that is just not out there in the public sphere. Anyway, Rolling Thunder's his name. I want to just hold on for a second. I should have thought about this before. I'll be right back. This is your guest is leaving, but she'll be right back.
Okay. Thank you for those who have put comments in the chat, and I'm going to, when we open it up, you can read your chat or phrase it for Mare however you want.
Okay, thank you. I'm back. You know, whenever I do some of these things, I have to ask permission on the spirit plane, and I'm getting a big yes. The question I was asking is, does William Commanda want to be known at this time? So this is one of the books that I was guided by an Algonquin friend to get in putting this global grid together. And this is grandfather William Commanda on the cover. And he is a foremost Algonquin elder who passed in 2011. He was the chief of his tribe. He was constantly called on by the Canadian government to meet dignitaries, to do ceremony. As soon as I opened the package with this book in it, and I looked at William Commanda's picture, I felt him come right in. And so every morning I greet him, and he's here. He's one of the ancestors who's here supporting me. It's incredibly humbling, but there are a number of prominent Native American elders who have lived more recently, who are really about bringing the four races together, the peace and the oneness of humanity. And this is a big part of William Commanda's work. And I contacted my Algonquin friend who recommended that I get this book, who had actually studied in person with William Commanda. I said, you won't believe he's in my space. You know, I got to tell you this. He said, well, William's an active ancestor. He's one of these ancestors who is, and he's multidimensional now, so he's in numerous places simultaneously. So I'm honoring him and his wisdom. And he's on the website with a quote from him, which is rather profound.
Wow. Mare, what do you think about opening it up now?
I think that's fine. Yeah, let's
Okay.
open it up, and I hope I can answer your questions.
Okay, I'm going to just change the security here so that folks can start their video. and can unmute themselves. So I'm going to call on Connie first because she has some comments here in the chat. And then I'll call on Rob Ross next. And then if you want to, you can use the reaction button down below and raise your hand, and we'll call on you next. So Connie, the floor is yours.
Well, I've been pretty active in the chat because Mary, you're touching on so much that's been my life over the past 30 years. So I don't have anything specific to say. What William Commanda is a very important player. I didn't know him. I knew many Lakota elders. Most of the elders I've known are gone now. I call them the visionary elders, who see the universal aspect of all of humanity and have that energy of us going forward together as humanity, the four colors of man, which you're keying into that energy, which is so important, and seeing and addressing what has been is very important, and healing that is the key piece to go forward, so we're not mired in shame, blame, and guilt and all that, because it's not from that place. We don't open our hearts, either from the blame and nor the guilt piece. So everyone needs to heal so we can go forward together. And so I just saw so much of what you're speaking of, and Noel's ancestor, William Brewster, was a very important player as a high frequency visionary who came over on the Mayflower along with my ancestors on the Mayflower, seeking a civilization based on the freedom of conscience, which I spend a lot of my time bringing forth the spiritual alignment of the Pilgrims and the Native people that they lived amongst in peace and friendship for 54 years.
Mm-hmm.
And William Brewster was a major player in standing up to the King of England and committing treason and standing up for humanity, taking that leap for humanity of knowing that we have the divine right to relate directly to our conscience and to the energies, which is what is native, which is the native way. So anyway, I'll stop there for now.
Connie, why don't you tell us your website? So you have several films and your book, The Trust Frequency, so people can learn more about your work, because it's very significant and very relevant to Mare's work.
Yeah, so my husband and I, Andrew Bailey, have written a book called The Trust Frequency, 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm, which Noel referred to, examining limited beliefs. Well, this is bringing indigenous cosmology and quantum science together to show the conscious, loving, abundant nature of the universe, which is at the essence of the native cosmology. So we're bringing the cosmology forward, not the issues, because we're about going forward in this neutral way into understanding how the universe works. And in unified science and the new science is proving even more than quantum science knew. So anybody that's interested, there's Jude Currivan is a major player in bringing forth the new science, as well as Nassim Haramein and a Resonance Science Academy. And so resonanceScience.org, you can take a course, free online course, and learn the new science that is the essence of what the indigenous peoples have known and been connected with. And we just science can't prove the love and the sacredness of it. That has to come from the human heart. So, and that's what's up as we're opening our hearts. So, and we also have, our book is at thetrustfrequency.net. And then we also have major work we do with the founding of this nation and the 54 years of peace and friendship with the Pilgrims, the spiritual founding of this nation, and the spiritual activism that it took to stand up to the king and come here and meet with the native people and live in friendship. So that's the first 50YERS.US. That's first50years.us. So we've been at this for decades, and it's wonderful, Mara, that you're bringing your gifts to this process. So I look forward to connecting with you further.
Yeah, thank you, Connie. Yeah, I'm very interested in, now that I'm learning more about your work. You and I have been like in the same circles online on Facebook for a while, but this is beautiful to be connecting more.
Thank you, Connie. And Mare, we have, I'm going to turn it over to Ross first, Rob Ross first, and then we'll go to Anne and Christy. So go ahead, Rob.
Good evening. Thank you, Mare, and thank you, Noel, all of you, for joining in. I really did not know what to expect. In some of my comments, I shared how Canada, back in 2008, in June of 2008, made their apology to the First Nations people there. It wasn't until a number of years later that the Pope actually acknowledged with a letter that what was done there. We here in the US, there's an extremely, as we're all talking, dark blood stain that we need. So I am thankful for what you all are doing. I myself, I'm Cherokee, Anahuac tribe, and yet I'm also white. So I do understand the rejection that somewhat of a conflict that can occur. However, I was brought up as a child of privilege. So I'm kind of caught in that middle. I'm also an ex-addict who didn't understand much of the trauma, which is why I share with you all, for all of you that are listening and all, to please watch the Wellbrighty movement. I got involved with them when I lived in Carolina for a period of time. Met Don Coyos, and it's an incredibly good, but it's understanding that generational trauma and learning to forgive. It's really was based for the Native Americans because they, and if you've been out there or those who've been out to Lakota, you know it's the poorest nation in our nation, and the average lifespan of a person there is 36 years old, due to the drug use, the gangs, the sexual abuse, all of those things. I will tell you that the Journey to Forgiveness video, make sure you have a box of tissues if you really want to understand what took place. It's just a touch of it, much of what you were sharing there, but there's more to the story. I also want to apologize because while I follow the Red Road myself, being Cherokee, I'm also a follower of Jesus. I will not tell people I'm a Christian because of what it has been. It is not. The Creator is deeply grieved, and we're seeing a rise in that in our nation today, beyond belief. There is a spiritual battle, and so we do need to be on the forefront. And with that, I'll bow out.
Well, Rob, you know, I'm offering you a lot of love, a lot of compassion right now. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this group feeling this for you and your journey. And so thank you for having the courage to walk the healing path that you have walked on, because it clearly hasn't been easy for you. And generational trauma is a very real thing. Very, very real. And yeah, I want to share something really brief, and that is that on Facebook, I did this little tiny ad for this event because I knew I wanted to reach more people than were in any of the circles that I was a part of or am a part of. And this Native American man from Canada responded. He saw it and he said, the first thing he said was he would really love to see the governments offer an apology. But then he said, well, but that's probably going to take a long time. And he said, thank you for what you're organizing. And then he went on to say that he's a survivor of the residential schools in Canada and the adoption process, which is still happening in the
It is.
United States, where Indigenous children are being taken from the Native families. And I don't know all the dynamics, I don't know all the stories, but there was and still continues to be this behavior on the part of the governments to take the children. And a lot of times they didn't ask the parents. And so he said in his postings or his comments, he said, I had to do a forgiveness ceremony. I had to forgive those who did this to me so that I can heal my heart and move forward in my life. And I read that and I was just, stunned that I love that he was so open to share this. And I just said to him, look, I'm holding you in my heart. Thank you for being so honest. And thank you for your courage to do the healing work that you've done, given how hard your childhood has been. So thank you, Rob, for being here. And personally, I'm honoring you for your courage. And may you continue to heal. And if I may just add this, because Mother Gaia is telling me to say this, is Mother is the ultimate healer. So any of us that need to go out and hug a tree or lie on the ground and call on Mother, she'll come in and hold you. So she's done that so many times for me, I can't even tell you. Anyway, so there are more people who have their hands raised, but I'm honoring you, Rob. Deeply honoring you. Thank you for your beautiful heart.
Thank you, Rob. Mare, we'll go to Anne. You can unmute Anne, please.
Hi, I wanted to also just reiterate how grateful I feel for everyone here and your open-heartedness. And I think there's something quite remarkable, considering this is a relatively small group of people, that I also am a descendant of John Robinson, the Pilgrim's pastor who blessed the Mayflower before it left. So I really feel like I'm very grateful to know that at least for half a century, the Pilgrims did the right thing, because I have felt really guilty, and I still feel, and guilty is not really the right word, just heartsick, knowing that that as a white person, of course, I am affiliated with benefiting from all of that colonialism, but actually personally in my own ancestry, I know that my ancestors did come and take the land. And so I don't know, but it seems as though to have at least 3 people out of 17 among that first group of settlers might mean something. I feel like maybe there's a significance to our being all here in this space at this time together.
That's really interesting. This is where I see that the ancestors have been weaving this. They guided all of us to come together in this circle. And as you were speaking, Anne, I could feel more ancestors coming in. So the contingent has gotten bigger here of ones who are supporting us and listening. And I want to speak to something else I didn't mention, is I've become aware of in some of the energies that I've been tuning in and doing this and holding space for it as best as I can, as humbling as this is the level of anger and sorrow that so many Indigenous ancestors passed over with into the ancestral realms. That it's my sense that as we, those of us around the planet who will be doing these ceremonies, as we write our letters from our heart, speaking for our race, as in, and Christian descendants and our ancestors and related ancestors who are the perpetrators, this will bring forward on the spirit realm, as I understand it, a beautiful healing that is going to be heard and recognized, registered within the ancestral realms, because this is where we can do the ancestral work to offer our love. And as one Indigenous elder said to me, he said, Mare, what you're doing is calling in the light in some really dark corners. And I'm adding that last piece, in some really dark corners that are in the ancestral planes. And I also want to add, because I haven't said anything about this yet, is that for those who are Indigenous today, obviously it's up to every single person who is Indigenous, say, or half Indigenous or whatever, is to follow your own guidance. This is really for us who are the descendants of these perpetrators to offer the apologies and forgive ourselves and our ancestors so that we can start to rise up from the ashes, to move forward into a future where we recognize we're all one. 4 races, we're all one. We have some ways to go, but this is the vision. So I guess I'll keep on calling on people. Christy, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Mare, as always, you're always doing amazing work. And I just, as a fellow mystic, I join with you in honoring this sacred day and this sacred offering of apology. And I want to bring in a thought. If I could just share really quickly, I can put the YouTube link to the video that I created on it. But you mentioned about the ceremony could be as simple as lighting a candle and saying the prayers. And I discovered in my research that the Berlin Wall, which was, we're trying to build a wall to block people coming to America. And the Berlin Wall was this insane wall that happened. Very few people, I think, really know that the Berlin Wall came down from someone lighting a candle at the base of the wall and saying a prayer, because there was a woman who was an advocate who was really alarmed about the number of children who die at the hand of war. And so she made this quilt that she unraveled, and she took a group of children around to build awareness, and went all over. Like, they went to the Great Wall of China and they unraveled the quilt, and the press came and they got all awareness and attention on the names of the children were written on the quilt who died at the hand of war. And the children would unravel the quilt and open it so that, your children were able to be educated about the. So when the Berlin Wall came down, she was invited to come as a peacemaker and receive a trophy, which was a piece of the wall that they were giving to peacemakers. And she was very excited about this because she had gone to the wall and she had opened her quilt with a group of children when the Berlin Wall was up. And they said that the ceremony was going to be at the exact place where the first crack in the wall came. And so when she got there, the day of the ceremony, she discovered that the crack in the wall that brought the Berlin Wall down was exactly where she placed her candle.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Wow. Wow.
So it's like we do have a power with intention and prayers that we don't know how it's going to amplify, because it took a few years, but the wall did come down. So I'll put the link to my videos if anyone
Please
wants
do.
to read the
Please
whole
do.
backstory.
And thank you, Christy. That's profound. And I just have to say this, is that we all have spiritual guardians. We all have ancestors. And when we do ceremony to call on your spiritual teams and your ancestors, and I always say ancestors serving the highest good because I've had some rogue ancestors, they come in. And this is a big part of these global grids that Mother Gaia keeps on wanting me to organize, is let's call on the spirit teams, because they are far more powerful than most people realize. And so what you're talking about with that wall and the very place where she had lit her candle speaks to perhaps what her spirit teams were doing there that affected the energies there in that wall. I mean, this is where I want to research what Connie's gone deep in, is there's scientific documentation on, it's all energy, but I'm a firm believer, and I've experienced this personally, of the powers of our spirit teams when we do ceremony to effect healing. All right, thank you, Christy.
Wonderful. We have one more guest, Bill Spady, Dr. Spady. You can unmute.
Hi, thank you. I've had the wonderful experience of at least a dozen times doing big medicine ceremony out in the desert areas in Utah. And my shamans were people who were schooled in Lakota spirituality. I'm just asking a question. I mean, this is not about my experiences, but if any of you can tell me if there is special significance in any of the spirituality of the American Native peoples of a triangle or of what I would call a golden ring. Just a circle, but it looks like a ring you'd put on your hand. No special.
I can't speak to that. I have not studied that with any Native elders.
Me neither.
I mean, the circle is a powerful spiritual, energetic period, but I can't speak to the golden ring there.
No, well, I'm just referring to a golden circle. It wasn't like a globe filled in. It was just a ring, and or a triangle that is just the edges of the triangle, not a full volume triangle. So I just wondered if there was any special.
Were you seeing this on the spirit plane, or you saw this physically?
I saw this physically in the sky in a ceremony. And my shaman said that I had energetically brought both in. And I had an experience that day that led me to believe what they might mean. But I thought I would just ask here, since there are so many of you that are much more familiar with this than I have been.
You know what I am being guided to say to you? Is it Bill? Is that right?
Yeah, Bill.
Is that follow your guidance.
Okay.
I just know that in some, if you have a circle with a dot in the middle, that's supposed to be, some regard that as that's creator, that's God. But I don't know if just a circle, maybe it's the alpha and the omega, there is no beginning and no end. But
I thought that too, and the circle is also related to some specifics of the work I was doing there. In the 2 days that I was there. But I just wondered if there was some other interpretation of this that I had missed. So thank you.
Bill, I'm just going to share this because I'm hearing this spiritually. Is this, if you don't mind, be kind of just sharing what I'm hearing. This relates to metaphysical work you've done in numerous past lives. And I'm hearing you have a sense of what those experiences have been, and now I'm being told to be quiet. I'm being told that's it. That's all I'm allowed to say.
I get it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
So there's somebody else with their hand up, John, and John came in kind of late.
So is there a way to be connected with your ancestors?
Oh boy. That's a big conversation, and actually someone's asked me to lead a workshop on connecting with our ancestors. So I'll give you a really brief response, John, is to light a candle and from your heart, call on your
I see.
ancestors serving your
Mhm.
highest good to come in, and they will hear you. And what you can do after that is just ask for their support every day, because they're the ones who have gifted us our lives. It's through them that we're even here in the physical, because they gave birth to the next generation, and ask for their guidance, ask for their support, ask for their love, and they will hear you and support you. And I'll share a brief story and then we need to wrap up. But a friend of mine, he used to live in the area. He passed a couple years ago. I still miss him. He had a Native American store in a town in Maryland, New Market. And that town was getting the road resurfaced and everything like that. So all the businesses got hammered economically for like a year, and he was really struggling. And I happened to pop
Wow.
into his store one day, and I just got a very clear message to say to him, and wasn't me giving him the message. I heard it to give to him. I said, your ancestors are waiting for you to call on them. Call on them to ask for their help with your store. And when I saw him a few months later, he said, Mare, that really helped a lot. Thank you for giving me that suggestion.
Mm.
So that's in brief,
Yeah.
some ideas of how to connect with your ancestors. We all have ancestors who are in our spirit team, but we have to ask for help. I mean, they help a little bit anyway, and I can't tell you how much or anything. It's variable, but to specifically call on them, light a candle, and from your heart, ask for them to come in and ask for their support.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here, Mare, and just say we have somebody who is on our call right now, but her name is Rochelle Gaiman, and she's a wonderful medium. And she helped me get in touch with some of my ancestors. So I'm just going to put her website, her name and website in the
Wow.
chat. And she was our guest last week, and she's helped many people of our group. So John, you may want to reach out to Rochelle. I think you might find
So
her to be
I
very
guess she
helpful.
can help me connect with my ancestors then.
Yes, she can help
All
you.
right.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it up. I don't see any other hands raised, and thank you for everybody who shared. I'm going
Someone,
to.
David, she has a question there.
Okay, Talia has a question. Talia, you'll need to unmute.
Well, yes, and I just wanted to thank you for that last question, and also just Bob and Noel for having this this come on, our co-creators convergence, and Mare, to you. But and also, I think many of us, and myself included, have some ancestors. Mine were in South Dakota, and probably some Lakota background back there. And I know that there was such hostility, and even with my aunts, who I just treasure their part in my life, but also just their language to those Lakotas who were coming in and staying in homes that had been left vacant, and then just what are they doing here? Just and also a dream I had with my grandmother that she had been it seemed to be part Lakota, that her ancestry had been there. She was a beautiful woman. I mean, it's just, I think many of us have that, and it's that we don't even really know. I mean, we don't know the details of, and so it's just like to say prayers for those unknown.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Talia.
Yeah. And because, just 2 generations back, 3 generations back, maybe even 1 generation back, people were ashamed to admit that they were Native
Exactly.
American or had Native blood, because they were afraid of how they're going to be treated. But I want to just put it out there that there are many, 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 many people who are mixed. And so related to this global grid, I hope that you will want to be part of it on any level that you feel called to. If it means offering forgiveness to the perpetrators, the ancestors who were the perpetrators, or if it means offering apologies from the ancestors who, the more hearts who are woven together in this global grid in a beautiful, sincere, grounded way, the more powerful this will be. So it's the invitation to all of you. So please go to the website, the apologies to originalpeoples.earth, and register. We'd really love to put you on the map. Or you don't need to register, but it's just great if we can really show how many people are involved. And I think on that note, should we wrap it up?
Mare, thank you for closing it out with what you just said about both offering forgiveness and making also the apologies. I cannot stress enough. Back in 2011, I'm an activist involved with trying to stop the slaughter of our wild wolves. And I was at a gathering in DC for Speak for the Wolves. And there was a couple of young ladies that were Anishinaabe that were there that spoke. And I was just drawn and called to go up to Raina Crow and just to apologize. And it was so beautiful because we stood there probably for the next 30 minutes, just embraced, and crying and sobbing. And there was so much healing that occurs in letting the tears flow. So thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for what you're doing. And
thank you, Rob.
You're welcome, Mare. And I want to continue to connect further.
Okay.
Beautiful.
That would be
Beautiful.
great. So on that note, what I would like to do is to thank all the spiritual ones who came forward on the spirit plane from the beginning of our ceremony, because we have been here in ceremony. So here we go. Calling out to all the sacred ones who joined here in ceremony to support us, to hold us in sacred space. Calling out to all the ancestors who have been holding us in sacred space, the ones who came forward in the middle of our discussion, our ceremony, the ones who were here in the beginning. We are here to bring the healing forward. May our hearts show how much we are offering love and seeking to come back into full reconciliation. Ceremony is now officially over. Thank you, beautiful ones, honoring all of you. And thank you to Noelle and Bob for hosting this.